be most proud of?
Well, I think Lee would be the most proud of probably the votes that he cast that help people. I think at the end of the day, I think he in his mind, he may not articulated it, but I think he in his mind would look back and say, what have I done to help some people today? And I don't think that makes any difference to him, although he represented the Ninth District in Indiana. But I think he would look at it and say, how did I help people? And I think that would probably be how he would gauge himself. And the most important things to him in his career might very well be the civil rights, votes like the Civil Rights Bill and the Medicaid bill and votes of that nature, where it was designed to help people. And it would directly help people. And I don't think that just applies to this country. I think he even carried that through in his foreign policy work and his foreign affairs work on the committee. I think he was interested in the type of aid programs that would get to the people in the countries that they were working with. And that's a very difficult thing to do, but I think that's the thing that he would look at the most.
What do you think it is about Lee Hamilton that people, I mean, here's a guy that represents a rural district, yet he's an expert on foreign policy. He is somebody that meets with heads of state, and yet he comes back home and everybody calls him Lee. What do you think it is about him that people find so, that they like about him so much? You know, 34 years from a district like this, where it's not a slam dunk. 34 years is a long time to serve. He had to have, really struck a chord with people. What do you think it was?
Well, I think that Lee is very approachable. He's easy to talk with. He's very receptive to conversation. He is, I think his background, the household he was raised in, I think all of that has a contribution. And I think I've heard him say several times in just conversations that as I was growing up each evening, when we were having dinner, we discussed public policies. In other words, current events, what was going on. And I think that helped set the course for him as to what he would be and how he would conduct himself with people. And through high school and college and so forth, he was always involved, it seemed like, with people. And I think it's just that people feel very comfortable around him. I think in many ways they feel comfortable around Lee, like, you might feel comfortable with your best friend. And they feel like they know him. They feel like they can talk to him. And I just think that's kind of, in a way, that's probably been kind of a secret to his success. And I think it's he has never been a partisan public official. He has the partisanship enters in during the amount of time that the campaign's on the roll, and he once he's elected, he represents all the people. And I think he did a spectacular job at that for 34 years.
And yet he's a passionate believer in the principles of the Democratic Party. He's not a new Democrat.
No, Lee is not a new Democrat, but Lee, if you recall how Lee approaches the principles of the Democratic Party, it's the FDR principles of the Democratic Party. And it's basically about people. And I've heard him say it 100 times that, they ask me why I'm a Democrat. I guess I'm a Democrat because at the end of the day, the Democrats...
Hold on.
Okay.
People ask me why. Are you ready? Okay.
I think, you know, I've heard him say it 100 times. People will ask him why he's a Democrat, and he says, I'm a Democrat because I think at the end of the day, the Democrats stand for policies that will help people. And that's kind of what it's about, is helping people. And I think that's where Lee's at. And that's why he's, like you said, he's a passionate Democrat.
Do you have anything you want to sum up your years with Lee?
Well, I think the time I spent with Lee working for him as a congressman, I think I can honestly say that okay. The time I spent working with Lee while he was in the Congress, I can say was obviously very, very enjoyable, in that I enjoyed going to work probably every day of my life. I could probably count the days that I might have chosen to do something else if I'd had the chance on the fingers of one hand.
Let's do it again. We're getting a rash of fun. Okay. One more time.
Where was I at? Okay.
Count on my.
Okay. I think the days that I would preferred not going to work and doing something else, I could have probably counted on the fingers of one hand. And I enjoyed it because I too enjoyed working with people and enjoyed doing what I could do to help people. And it just made it easy for me, because I knew that's what he wanted to do, and that's what his goal was, to help as many people as he could. And there's a lot of things that you have to do to make that happen, and they weren't really that difficult to do in working in his office. I didn't only enjoy it quite a bit, I learned a lot from it.
Easier to move me and the microphone than this.
But he ends up moving both of you. Well, it's the background. Look at the background. Okay, well, first tell me your name.
Linda Bourne.
And you're going to have to incorporate my question into.
Oh, that's right. Wayne told me that.
When did you tell me about when you started working for Lee and what you did for him?
I started working for Lee in 1974. I was hired as the administrative assistant to Pat Russell, and also as a receptionist.
And then you keep going. And then at some point you became a caseworker and had direct contact with constituents. Is that right?
Yes, yes.
So tell me a little bit about what you did and how Lee interacted with constituents.
Well, the constituency casework was very important to Lee. He felt a great responsibility to his constituents in helping them with problems that involved the federal government. He saw that as part of his role as a representative. So it was something that he valued and kept tabs on very, very carefully. And what it involved was people who would come to him. They might be having a problem with IRS, the Internal Revenue Service, or the Farmers Home Administration, military, immigration. Primarily, we had a lot of casework with Social Security, people who were trying to obtain Social Security disability benefits or veterans benefits. There were 2 caseworkers, and we each had our own assigned areas to work with.
Did you? Oh, sorry. you ever accompany him to town hall meetings or other public events when people approached him about problems?
Yes, staff always accompanied the congressman at the public meetings, especially when we were having the general public meetings, so that we could be there from a casework standpoint, and then of course so that he could talk to the constituents too about the casework.
What did you observe about how he interacted with the constituents? What was that like?
Well, the congressman always had time to talk to his constituents, and he was very direct with them, compassionate. He would listen to their story or what their problem was, and then let them know very frankly what he was able to do and what he wasn't able to do as a congressman, but that he would try his best to get at least information or to resolve their problem for them.
Now, you know, one thing that has always interested me is here's a guy who, you know, would meet with world leaders, and yet back home, because I was in his district for a time, back home, people would call him Lee. He was never a Congressman
Yes.
Hamilton or Mr. Hamilton. It was always Lee. How was it, do you think, he sort of was, you know, he was able to kind of pull that off, and he was able to have the constituents relate to him in that way? Talk about that.
Well, I think Lee always related. It's difficult for me to call him Lee. I always call him Congressman, but he always related to his constituents from the very start, as I understand it, even though I didn't work for him when he was first elected. But he established that early on, this relationship with his constituency, I believe, and he called people by the first name, and he encouraged that very friendly, like people knew him. And so I think that just grew over the years. The longer he was in Congress, the more they felt like he was their friend, he was their representative. But even though he held such positions of stature in Washington as he moved through Congress and was on different committees and so forth, when he came back to Indiana, he was Lee Hamilton. And I know that the staff even felt that way. What does he do on the airplane to make that transition? But I think, and I believe that Lee would say this, that coming back to the district, you would think when he finished the week in Washington, he would be ready for a weekend to relax or to catch up. But I believe coming back to the district fed him and kept him grounded in what his role was as a congressman. And he would come out on Friday or maybe Thursday and go throughout the whole weekend, and then get on a plane, go back to Washington and start all over again. And that would happen maybe 2 weekends or more each month. So I think it grounded him. He felt it was very important, and it helped him do his job in Washington.
What was it like to see him in action, town hall meetings, public meetings, parades? He's a guy that was constantly on the go. So talk a little bit about what it was like to see him in action.
When I would observe him, particularly at town meetings or in forums that he might have for businessmen or farmers, various forums he would have, I was always impressed by his ability to recall and to retain information. He's just brilliant in that regard. And when people would ask him questions that might not be current activities in Washington, it might prompt him to have to go back to something that had happened much earlier. He was always able to do that. And I think that people felt confident in his abilities because he didn't have notes in front of him. And I don't believe I ever, or rarely did I hear him say, I don't know the answer to that. If he didn't, he would say, I will look into that and I'll get back to you. And that was something else that he did. If he said he was going to get back to you, he did get back to folks. He would make certain that when he went back to Washington, he would get that information and get them out to them. So I was always impressed by that ability. At the same time, he could just talk about the most common things, about people's families and what's happening in their lives. He could do both things. He could be just very, very open and just have general conversation with people. Whatever level the people came to him with, he had that capability to communicate.
What do you think drove him? Why do you think he was so committed?
That's a good question.
We may have to get him trained.
These are facials and was cutting see, and then he parked in the mayor's, and Wayne said, "I know he's not the mayor."
Okay, so I asked you to hold that point. What do you think makes Lee tick, or what drives him, what gives him this commitment to, the people of Southern Indiana?
I believe I've asked myself that question because for myself, I didn't.
Go ahead. Start over.
Thinking about what made Lee so committed to. Oh, I see you have one.
All right. So, what do you think made Lee tick, or why do you think he's so committed to people?
Thinking back on my time with Lee and thinking about the years that he spent committed to being a congressman, I just felt many times, why would anyone want to do this job? It requires so much today to be a congressman, and it has for quite a few years. And why would he want to be there all week under that pressure and such a hectic schedule, and then come out to the district, do the same thing, listen to people complain, go back to Washington and start over again? But in thinking back on my experience with him, I believe that Lee Hamilton is just one of those rare people that found his niche. I don't know when that happened, if he felt that going into it. I didn't know him then. But I think there are just some people who really, that is, being a congressman, being in politics is their forte. And I just believe that he was dedicated to it. You'd have to be to stay in it that many years. And I think that it must have been something that he loved dearly for him to be able to stay in and be that active and for so many years.
Now, do you have any specific recollection that you might be able to share?
I've tried to think of some story that directly involved him, and I'm not able to. We have a lot of stories that involve the constituents who came to us with problems, but Lee was always pretty serious when it came to talking to his constituents, unless they were joking with him, and I'm really not able to think of an example of an unusual. Not that I can think of.
That's good. Right.
One of the times that I thought Lee was most helpful from a casework standpoint, one of his constituents was traveling in Germany on vacation and had a very serious heart attack. And so the wife was with him, but no one else. They were in a foreign country. They didn't speak English, or they didn't speak German, and they were dealing with a medical team that even those who spoke English, when you're speaking about medical problems, it's very difficult. So they were in touch with the congressman's office, wanting some help about how could they deal with this medical problem in a foreign country. And we were able to get in touch with the State Department in the city in Germany that they were in. I don't recall, it might have been Frankfurt. And they were able to send a staff person over. And the family was just forever grateful to Lee because it was a very stressful time for them. And the man did recover and was able to return home. So when you're able to help constituents in such a direct way, it's really a sign of what a congressman can do, is capable of doing, and in Lee Hamilton's case was willing to do for this constituent.
You were saying as we were talking there off camera that he touched people so dramatically. Why don't you say that again and talk about what that's brought you guys?
I think Lee touched people dramatically because of the casework. People were aware of what he was doing from a legislation standpoint, but how they connected with him more was they're bringing some problem to him or some question to him, and he was able to respond to that. And so through the casework, it impacted on their lives directly, whereas they may not see that direct relationship between what he was doing in Washington by voting a certain way. That might not have been so apparent as when he helped them get a bureaucrat to respond to them, or even if it was a matter that was outside of Lee's jurisdiction. If it wasn't a federal matter, we would let the constituent know that, but we would still make an effort to help them. So it might even be a sewer department problem in a city, but we would contact the city officials and perhaps the person would get a response. So at any level, he was willing to try to help a constituent.